How do you stay motivated, inspired, encouraged when it feels like everyone else is so much better than me? How do you stay motivated to keep practicing, sculpting in my case, when days go by and I'm unhappy with the results? How to keep up with making art when feeling burned out or bored of it. You get the picture. These are the top questions that I was asked on Twitter when I asked, I'm doing a video on art habits, improving. What questions do you have for me? And it became very clear to me that a lot of you are struggling with motivation, or lack of motivation, I should say. And it makes perfect sense. I'm really not surprised at all. I mean, if you were to look at like a pool of 1,000 people who started learning art and they wanted to get good at art and then tracked it like 10 years into the future, where there's like maybe 2 or 3 of those people remaining. And then you went back and surveyed the 997 people who quit and asked them why. I'm sure that most of them would say it was because I just couldn't stay motivated. I couldn't learn. It was difficult. It was a struggle. It was painful. I didn't know what was going wrong. It's a mental game. It's not like this motivation question isn't something that is like good to know. Like, oh, I got to learn my art skills and technical stuff. It's also good to know about motivation. At the start, it is the most important thing, especially if you are self-learning at home. If you're in a classroom where you have a curriculum and you've got 3 years ahead of you and you've got students around you that are also failing, and you're drawing and you whatever, and you look over and you go, oh, wow, they also suck just like me. It can feel good, right? Or at least it feels better than sitting and suffering in silence by yourself at home. But when you're self-learning, it is the most important thing. Like they say, if you listen to any of those motivational gurus or whatever, like if you want to lose weight, right? The first thing you should do is just focus on developing the habit of going to the gym. And it's going to the gym and enjoying it so that you keep going back again and again and again. That is the only focus at the front. In fact, they actually say you should start by saying, like, if you can't go to the gym, you want to, but you just can't bring yourself to do it. They say, force yourself to go to the gym for a week for 2 minutes each day, right? And you go, 2 minutes? It's like, yeah, 2 minutes. That's all you have to do. Get out of your car, go to the gym, clock in, clock out, come back home. If you can develop that, it'll feel painful because you're like, well, I'm going all the way there. I might as well work out. But like, no, just focus on that. You will develop a habit of like, yeah, this isn't so bad. Like putting on the clothing, getting the gym bag, getting the water, getting the phone, everything that I need to get to the gym, driving down there, going there. It's not so bad. I can do that. It's when you try to punish yourself by going like, I'm going to start working out today. And you go down there for 3 hours and you push weight that you've never pushed before. You burn yourself way out. And then the next morning you go, oh, my muscles are so sore. I cannot do that again, right? And then you just end up not developing the habit. So, and then you end up fat and you can't, not hitting your fitness goals, etc., and you end up quitting, right? So the exact same thing is true with art. You want to start, you want to focus at the start on just trying to enjoy it, and you know, you'll learn some techniques and things along the way, but don't go in too deep. It's tempting, like you're motivated, like, yes, let's do it. I'm going to go in hard. That is a big problem because you will end up wiping yourself out like the person laying in bed, not wanting to work out. So anyways, motivation, I hear you. And you're not alone. A lot of people struggle with it. Every artist, I'm sure, struggles with it. I know that I personally have. I've talked about it before in my last episode of the podcast, talked about it in my Habits of Effective Artwork. I deliberately wanted to learn 2D art, one, because I wanted to learn that skill, but also because I think it's good to just go back to something that I don't know, because I teach 3D and like the methodology of 3D and how to learn it and everything. It's hard to remember what it's like to start learning a new skill. And that was very eye-opening to me because, yeah, motivation was the biggest thing that was like an alarm bell to me. It was like the crushing despair of failure was what sucked, right? So anyways, in this video, I'm going to give you 5 ways to stay motivated while failing to learn art. I say that as a joke, failing to learning art, but let's be honest, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? You have to fail to get good at something. You have to fail. So how do you stay motivated through that? But to those questions, the burnout questions, I'm feeling depressed, I feel like I can't get anywhere, I feel like blah, 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 blah. Something that you could do just to start with is the same thing that you would do if you went to a psychologist, a good psychologist, or psychiatrist. I can never get those two terms right. I don't know which one's which. But if you went to one of those psychologists, sat in a chair and said, I'm depressed, a good psychologist would not go, here's some pills. A lot of them would, obviously, but a good one would not say that. They would say, you're feeling depressed. Tell me more. And he'd get out his little notepad. And they go, well, I'm feeling at work. I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just like not getting anywhere. Like no one seems to like me. And then like the stress of like being at home with the kids and the wife. And there's a lot of stuff going on. I feel like I just can't relax. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in it. And then eventually you find out like the problem is like you're not getting enough sleep. Right? And so you're like over caffeinated and because of that, you're jittery and you're anxious and that feeds off onto other people and blah, blah, blah. And the reason you're over caffeinated and you're not getting enough sleep is because you're drinking alcohol before bed. And so the solution isn't medicine. It's to stop the alcohol because that is the root of the problem that causes everything else. And then maybe the reason you drank alcohol was because of something else, right? Wanted to relax when there's other ways you could do it healthy, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, point is root cause of the problem. So I can't do that with you, but you can do it with yourself. Often asking yourself questions is just as effective as going to a professional to get them to ask the why question. So I think they call it the 3 whys, right? If you feel stuck, if you feel like you're not getting anywhere, ask yourself 3 whys. So I'm feeling burned out and I'm feeling burned out learning art. Why? Well, it feels like I'm not getting anywhere. Why? Well, when I look online, I can see everybody else is doing great, and I feel like my art isn't improving. Why? Well, that's annoying. 3 whys in a row. But you get the point. You end up getting to more of a what might be the root cause of the problem. Because who knows? I mean, if you don't have energy and motivation to do anything, not just art, but even like clean up the house or I don't know, do things you know you need to do. I mean, it might not be just an art thing. It might be a depression thing. It might be something that you need professional help with. Who knows? I'm going to assume for the sake of this video, this podcast, that you're all pretty well off. Like you're fine. Your life is going okay. It's just the art thing that needs help with. So 5 ways. Let's get into it. Number 1, reduce the difficulty. So I'll start with a little anecdote, little story. You know how everyone is like nostalgic for the old arcade games, like the old video games, the 80s and 90s? Like I figured there must be something special about them because I'd never played them. And then a couple of years ago, I got a chance to play them, right? It was actually at SIGGRAPH, the 3D conference in LA. And one of the after parties, because there's all these after parties at SIGGRAPH, was it was hosted at an arcade bar. So it was like I guess it was an LA thing, but it was like a bar with a free arcade, and it was just like all these old games from the 80s and 90s that they put there, and all the games were free. You just had to buy drinks and whatever. It was a cool concept. It was fun to go out and talk to people, but I was like excited because I'm like, oh my goodness, like it's the Donkey Kong game. I've never played Donkey Kong. Let's give it a shot. And you hit the go button, and your character goes, and it would like hit an enemy or something like that. And you go, what? And it go, and you go, hang on, what am I even doing? And game over. And I was like, huh? I'm like, all right, maybe it was just one game. Go to the next game. Same thing. Every single game was so punishingly hard, like unnecessarily punishing. It really blew my mind because that's the opposite of today. If you open up, just download any game from the iOS Apple Store, they figured it out. Like graphics have evolved over the years, that's obvious, but also the game user experience has improved, and I don't think it gets nearly enough attention. It starts, if you start out any game on your iPhone, it'll go, you'll see like a character running. And then it'll go like, this is you. And you're like, oh, this is me. And then it goes like, swipe up to jump over the log. And you swipe up and he goes, whoop. And then it goes, great job. And it goes, swipe left to avoid the obstacle. And you swipe left. And then it goes, great job. And then it goes like, these are the apples that give you the power. Collect the apple. Whoop. And then it goes like, click here to put the thing. And you do the thing. And then within like a few steps, you've figured out the whole mechanics of the game. And then it's fun. And I actually read a book on it. It was like gamification. There was a couple of books on gamification and game design because, like, I don't know, 7-ish years ago, I was going to build like a gamification thing to the Blender Guru website. I thought that might be fun. So I was reading all these books on it. Never went with that idea, but it was actually really interesting learning that I've applied to learning actually today. Basically, the best games find a delicate balance between I'm bored, this is too easy, and I hate this, this is too hard. And there's a sliver between those. If that was a graph, there's a tiny slither where it's fun, right? It's just challenging enough that it's not too easy, but it's not so challenging that you want to quit. And it's finding that perfect middle spot that games like they iterate over years and years and years of user testing before they end up at this final thing. They do so much data analysis on where people quit in games, and then they go, that there must be something about that level, that experience that makes people want to quit. Let's move it back. Let's make that level 50 instead of level 35 or whatever it is. Apparently Angry Birds is very good at this. The original one, I don't know how many 35 spin-offs or whatever they've got at the moment, but what was the other one? Plants vs. Zombies, that's another one that was like an example on gamification. But anyways, the whole reason I'm telling you this is that point number one is reduce the difficulty. When you are starting out, just like a video game, you do not want to start with the boss level before you've done the tutorial level. This is above all else when people tell me they're demotivated, or I don't know, I'm stuck, I don't know what's going on. They've started with something that is simply too hard. Now, for a while, I didn't understand why that was a problem. Like when I was learning 2D drawing and like sculpting, learning sculpting in Blender recently, because I'm not really good at that, but I wanted to learn to make faces, so I started sculpting faces. Guess what? Really hard. So ridiculously hard. Same with drawing. I wanted to get good at drawing. I started drawing faces. That is the hardest thing to draw. And I kind of knew that, right? Yeah, I'm an artist, been doing this a few years. I know they talk about the uncanny valley and how we are the most familiar with faces. We've like biologically, we're wired to know when, you know, a face looks off or wrong or something's not right about it. So we're going to notice subtle imperfections there, but we're not going to notice, you know, subtle changes in like a shark, right? Nobody knows really what sharks look like. You could put the fin in the total wrong area and your eye's probably not going to notice. So it's better off to start drawing a shark than it is to draw a human face. But I thought, I want to get good at human faces, so why not start there? Like I have to get there eventually, right? I mean, what's the problem in starting to learn through the face problem and figure that out as I'm learning drawing? The problem is motivation, right? You can fail once, you can fail twice, you can fail 3 times, and you can kind of shrug it off, right? Like, you know, I'm learning, right? Do another face. Yeah, I'm learning. Try and do that as I did for like 18 months. It really wears you down, really. If I didn't have the daily habit thing that I talked about in the last episode of this, I couldn't have done it. It is so punishing. You can do a few failures, right? Don't get me wrong. It's, challenge is challenge. And I'm not saying if you're trying to sculpt a face and you're sculpting now and you should stop, like, well, yeah, maybe you should. But what's I going with this? The point is that because motivation is the most important thing, you will probably inevitably quit, or you'll have a break, a long pause, if you start doing things that are way too hard. Like if you wanted to be a figure skater, right? Like, I'm a young teenager, I'm going to be a figure skater because I've seen them on TV and it looks like a fun thing to do. You've never really hit the ice before, but you go like, I'm going to start by trying to do the quadruple spin leap in the air that they do in the Olympics, right? The thing that it's like one of the hardest jumps or whatever, right? I'm going to start doing that because after all, I have to get there eventually. That's what I want to do. So why don't I start with that first? That would be insane. Nobody would say that that would succeed, right? And maybe one person could, right? Just going out onto the ice every day and trying, falling down, smashing their chin into the ice, trying again, breaking an arm, coming back, trying again, and just doing that repeatedly. There's a chance you might get it, but there'll be millions who would have failed before you from that method, right? I think the exact same thing is true for a lot of people. They are trying to do things that are just really, really hard. Here's a few things that are really hard to do for 3D, because I know a lot of you watching this are in 3D art, right? Animals, right? Cats, dogs, something about the eyes, very hard. Too many creepy cats and dog models out there. The fur as well. Fur is a really hard one to get right. Obviously, characters, as I've mentioned, realistic faces. If you wanted to go down the face route, start with like an orc, or something with like pointy ears or something unnatural. There's a reason a lot of artists start with that. It's not necessarily that they all like Warhammer and Lord of the Rings. It's also because it enables, it gives you the sense that you're making the thing you want to make, which is a face, but it's not so punishing that it's a realistic face. It's something that your mind sees as fantasy and therefore is forgiving when the nose isn't in the right place, etc., etc. So that as you learn more and more, you can eventually get to a realistic face, if you get what I'm saying. Anyways, so this is something that, I've really only just learned that when you're starting out, you want to put things on like a scale, right? Inanimate objects are generally a lot easier than animate objects. I talked about this in the last episode, but one of the best things you can do is like find a photo of something and try and replicate that photo and then put the photo over the top of your render or your painting or whatever it is at the end and see where it's off, because the proportions might be off, the texture might be off, the lighting might be off, anything else might be off, and you don't need like an expert's opinion to tell you that something's off. You can just get that from a photo. So inanimate objects like that are really recommended when you're just starting out. So anyways, that is point number 1, which is reduce the difficulty. Number 2, second way to stay motivated. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. So a really common joke, meme, whatever in the art community is that ArtStation is depressing, right? You hear it at like conferences and things, people joking about like, oh man, I try and avoid ArtStation. It's so depressing seeing how good everyone is, right? And it's palpable when you go there, right? It's just the best art from all of the best artists in the world with an algorithm to tell when something is popular, meaning it's probably the best work maybe this artist has ever done. Therefore, put it up in the trending thing so that it's at the front page. And it is the cream of the crop of the world of artists that are on Earth today, the absolute cream of the crop. And you could know this, and yet when you still look at your own artwork, you are comparing it to what you're seeing on the screen, right? And behind that, of course, each one of those artists has different amounts of practice, right? Like if ArtStation had a counter of like the accrued lifetime hours of practice that each artist had, which of course is impossible, but if it did, that would be a lot more helpful, right? Because you would look at an artwork and you would see like, oh, wow, yeah, this artist has got 23,000 hours of practice behind them. They've been working professionally for 2 decades now. Obviously, I'm not going to be at that level, but it doesn't have that. And so it's really hard. It's really hard to look at the world. I mean, not just ArtStation. I mean, Twitter, YouTube, any place that is a platform that prioritizes good content is going to show you the absolute cream of the crop. Instagram, Pinterest, anything. It's not going to show you all the drudge, all the stuff down there that people go, not clicking on that. It doesn't, like the old internet used to do that, right? Like you go to like DeviantArt or I don't know, any art forum, it was like a mixed bag because it was whoever just posted recently, you would see their stuff. And so you kind of got a better feel for what was normal, right, for people like you. But now everything is, it's an algorithm. It's gamified. And I mean, that's good. It creates a better user experience. I mean, you don't really, when you go to an art forum, you don't go, I hope I can see some shite, right? You go like, I hope I can see some really good artwork. So it does do a better job of that. I wouldn't want to go back to an old art forum. But there is the problem that now it's really eating away at your motivation because you are comparing yourself to them, and you shouldn't, okay? You need to keep this firmly in the back of your mind. It's, believe it or not, it's actually one of the 12 rules of life on the poster that's right behind me by Jordan Peterson, who Twitter was very quick to tell me was a Nazi, which, I mean, I'd never heard that one before, but they explained why, and I disagree. It's a great book. It's actually one of the chapters in it. Compare yourself to who you are today, not who you were, not who someone else is today. So, sorry, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who somebody else is today. It's just good, solid advice. Somebody else said it was a really great quote. It was like, if you were just learning the violin, you wouldn't book yourself at like the grand theater of the world or something to do a performance, right? You don't do that. We know instinctively that practice, hours of practice, thousands of hours probably of practice is required before you can go and do the thing that the masters, the professionals, the guys on the stage are doing. We know that instinctively, and yet we still compare ourselves to them in the art world, right? And I think it's because of there's probably a word for it, but it's like the culture of just seeing everyone's best life, the best moments of their life, making you feel sadder. Anyway, I don't think that the internet is necessarily bad or nefarious for this reason, but it is something to be aware of, and it is sort of increasing that feeling of not feeling good. So look back on just the artwork that came before you. And compare yourself to, where you started from. Like, compare yourself to where you were a month ago. I talked about this in the last episode. Something you should do is review your work for the last month. If you're doing like an hour a day, once a month is fine. Go back and review it. Spend one of your learning practice sessions just doing that and seeing if there's any lessons there, because it'll become pretty clear that like some of them were good, some of them were bad. And you'll be able to see what went well about one and what went wrong about another. And it's really eye-opening. But that's what you should be doing, not going to ArtStation and going, oh, I'm so depressed. Something else you can do is to just sort by latest in any of these platforms like ArtStation. And that's a nice reminder, right? Same with like Reddit. Go on the Blender subreddit and just sort by new. And then you can go like, yes, I'm not alone. What I'm saying is it's shite. Right? As it should be. Everyone's going to produce some, so you might as well just accept it. All right. Hours number 2. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. I don't know if it is actually fun. Let's find out. 1 for learning, 1 for fun. That's what number 3 is. So there's a back and forth relationship to when you're learning a new skill, to needing new information and needing practical practice, right? If you only had one, like if you were only looking at new information, then you would be like theoretically know things but have no idea how to apply it, and you would not be getting anywhere as an artist because you would never take your first step. However, if you were all practice and no information, you would just be like flailing around in the dark, doing sloppy mistake after sloppy mistake, never like trying to reinvent the wheel in a painfully long process when somebody's already got tutorials or training that would have saved you hundreds of hours of time before it. So there's a balance. It's a balancing act of knowing when you need new information, knowing when you should stop and go like, I feel like, and this is why that review session can be really helpful, looking back on your volume of work the last month. Because you can see where it is that you've been making the same mistakes again and again and again. In my 2D learnings, it became clear to me that, yeah, like my proportions were wrong. I mean, that's just like a common problem I think a lot of 2D artists have. They just put the line in the wrong place, and you keep making the same mistake again and again and again and again and again and again. Eventually, like if you look back on the review stage, yeah, you should be able to point to that and go, maybe I've learned something wrong. Like I talked about it in my presentation, but yeah, I was making the same mistake over and over again. And I went back to watch the tutorial, like the theory lesson that explained the human head scale, like where the lines go and everything. I went back and looked at that, and I had completely misremembered one of the measurements, right? Like it was supposed to be like the side of the head is like 3/4, 2/3 of the whole, I don't know what it was. I was doing it 1/2 or something like that. And because of that, it was totally off. So if I had just kept practicing and trying to do that volume of work, I wouldn't have got anywhere. It was only by that balancing act of recognizing that I needed new information and going back and doing that. So when I say number 3 is one for learning, one for fun, it's a terrible title. Maybe I should call it one for me, one for learning. Is that better? Okay, what I mean by that is do one tutorial and then do one by yourself. One tutorial, one by yourself. And what this will do is a couple of things, two benefits. One is it will force you, when you're actually watching a tutorial or you're reading a book or you're doing theory lesson or something like that, it lets you force your brain to start processing the information and trying to truly understand it and remember it, because you know that your next project, you're going to be going it solo. So that's one part of it, but it's also the inspiration thing. When you're doing a tutorial, it's usually not the thing you want to do, right? Like when you watched my donut tutorial on how to learn Blender, chances are you were not a donut fanatic prior to that, and you were like, oh boy, I want to watch a video on how to make a 3D donut, right? Nobody has that goal. It was, you had to learn the donut thing in order to learn the software so that you could do what you really want to do, which is make, like, I don't know, the power glove from the Avengers or something, right? The thing you actually started for. So something that all tutors get, people who make tutorials, they just get requests of tutorials for the most obscure thing. Like, oh, can you make a tutorial on how to make a birdhouse? Or, oh, can you make a tutorial on how to make like a fortress, but from Lord of the Rings or something like that? And it's like the most specific thing. And I never do. I don't reply to them, but I just want to say to them, like, you are never going to get a tutorial on that thing. Or you might, if you're lucky. Somebody out there might just have the exact same interest as you and do that one thing. That's not what tutorials are for. Tutorials aren't, to show you how to do the exact thing. Some of them are. I mean, yes, I know, like there's documents, like there's tutorials on how to use Microsoft Word in order to save and print a file. That's pretty specific and literal. That's what you want to do, right? But when it comes to art and when it comes to complex things, tutorials are generally not what you want to do. So you are doing a tutorial in order so that the thing you can do at the end is what you actually want to do. So that's why I think doing one tutorial to learn the thing that you need to do, get the new information, and then do something solo by yourself that you actually enjoy. So you watch the donut tutorial and then you go, how do I make a power glove, right? How do I do the Avengers power glove thing? That's a lot more modeling that was covered in the tutorial. Ooh, boy, this is hard. I guess I got to get new information. So then you go out and you maybe watch a couple of short videos on like the modeling thing, and you start modeling it yourself, and you're like, I don't know about this. And you start, anyways, that process, you'll probably fail, by the way, if you went from donut to power glove. You probably would. Probably go something a little easier than that. You should probably pick something, by the way, that is related to what you just learned, right? Like I would watch a tutorial on how to do shading, like shading a 2D shading with a pencil or whatever. And then straight from that, shade a character or shade whatever. And that's the focus for the next piece, is the shading thing. So anyways, one tutorial and then one for you. Maybe that's what I should call that. One tutorial, one for you. One for learning, one for fun. No, that's a mouthful. We're not going with that. Okay. Oh, you know what? Polygon advert. Let me ask you something. You want to die alone? Do you? Want to die in your bed by yourself? No one around you? No one loves you? Well, that's going to be a problem if you've spent too long on the computer. Is that too much of a stretch? A polygon saves you time, saves you, the artist, time so that you can focus on what matters. Might not necessarily be spending time with your family so that they're there at your deathbed when you finally die one day, but it could be. Or it could be so that you get to focus on what matters in the scene that you're creating, the artistic expression, the aesthetics, and not capturing your own textures with your own camera and trying to extrapolate the normal maps or displacement, or downloading a free texture, right? And then it's not good because most free textures are not good. And then, of course, you have to fix it and do a whole bunch of other stuff to make it look, cover it with bushes and terrible things. Like a lot of shortcuts, by the way, end up not being shortcuts in the end. You end up spending more time trying to fix the thing that came for free. And I think most experienced artists have it. I mean, I know I have experience with this. I'm like, I need a tree. I don't want to pay for a tree. I'm going to get a free tree. Type in free tree, and then you find some free trees and you put them in there, and they're, the normals are just all shot to hell, and like it's way too many polys in the leaf, not enough in the trunk. So you end up like adding detail to the trunk to make it and you end up trying to fix this thing that came for free and spending a couple of hours on that rather than spending a couple of bucks on an actual tree that somebody made properly. So, I mean, I've drilled on it a lot. So that's what Polygon is. We came with the goal of helping you make better renders faster. So that's what we do. So we've released a brand new collection of photo scans, high quality photo scans, large captured photo scans of 3x3 meters, which is very important when you are scaling a terrain. If you ever tried to make an environment and then like you can see the same grass patch repeating again and again and again across it, right? How do you do? Well, it's often because it was like a 1x1 meter scan, right? Because that's easier for the photographer to do. We went the hard way and went 3x3 meters, large section of ground. It's like available in 8K. It's sharper. We took like sometimes thousands of photos per scan. Anyways, it was a lot of work. A lot of money goes into each one of the assets so that you can get them at a very, very, very low price, by the way, compared to the competition. And they're super high quality, and it's great. So hopefully that was a better advert than the last episode's advert. Maybe I'll get better. Or worse. You can look forward to that. Okay, number 4. Here we go. Back into it. How to stay motivated. Reframe the hardship. So obviously you don't want to call yourself a failure when you're failing, right? You don't want to look at the work that you've just done and gone, oh God, I suck, right? You want to feel that way, but you don't want to do that, right? The hardship, the pains that you feel when things are just not working, or you've tried it 3 times in a row and it's just still not working, that can eat away at you if you frame it wrongly in your mind. I like to learn, let me get a quick drink here. Something that was really helpful in my business career, actually, was one of the gurus that I was reading or listening to at the time, who mentioned that when you're starting a business, right, in a new space and you're being like the niche, whatever space you're in my case, it was Blender tutorials, believe it or not, and you're doing something that's really hard, and you've failed at it a couple of times now and you can't figure it out and you feel like quitting, that's a point that you should realize that this is an opportunity to get one ahead on any competitors that might come behind you. Because if you were to quit at this point, chances are a lot of other people are also hitting these same problems and they're likely to quit as well. If you push through it and you succeed, you are going to be one of the few people that get ahead, that make it to a point, that make it, right? It's like if you were to like look at like a racetrack, right? And there's like all these hairpins going down a mountain. And then like at each hairpin, there's like the wreckages of cars, right? Of the cars that came before you, right? If you were to give up at the hairpin because it looks too hard and you can't figure it out, you're just going to be like all the other wreckages there, right? But chances are, if you were to just keep going on, keep trying to get around these difficult things right down to the end of the track, chances are there's not going to be other competitors around you. So you got a good chance of doing better. Now, I mean, I guess this works if you're a competitively minded person, which I was more so back then, I think. I was like super competitive. But it can be, you know, if you're the sort of person that as an artist, you are like that. But yeah, you know, the sort of the mental voices in your head, every psychologist, Buddhist monk, or anyone focused on the enlightenment of the mind, they talk about the inner voice in your head and getting a handle on it, right? Something that, coming back to that book, 12 Rules to Live Your Life, talks about the treat yourself as somebody, what is it? It's like, treat you, let me just read it. Goodness sake, it's right behind me. Pet the cat, set your house in order. Oh yes, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. And in the book, he talks about in that chapter that like he was a clinical psychologist for 20 years and met thousands of clients over the years, and he would prescribe the medicine that they needed because he could see that this person was not going to get through it and able to do the mental work in order to get to a place where they're okay without the medication today. And these people were not taking it. A lot of people were not taking it. And he thought what was interesting was that when you go to the vet with your dog and the vet says you need to give this medicine to the dog, everyone gives the medicine to the dog, right? So we treat our dog better than we treat ourselves, right? Which was an interesting framing of things. I never thought of it that way. And it is totally true, right? Often we are nicer to other people, more forgiving of other people's failures, especially when they're friends of ours and family members, people that we actually support. When it's somebody you don't support, you obviously laugh in Schadenfreude, as everybody does. But yeah, we are generally nice to people. And the inner voice in our inner critic is just punishing, right? And so, I mean, I don't know, getting kind of deep here, but it's something I'm still trying to figure out, right? The reframing of the voice in your head that says that you're not good enough. Really, I was just trying to say the hairpin analogy, talking about the race car going down the track, reframing the failure to be like, this is an opportunity to win out the competitor. But it really is, it's about, it's about changing the way you interpret an outcome in your life, right? And if you are punishing yourself, if you're killing yourself over things that you wouldn't say that to, like if you've got a little brother or a little sister that you like and you support, like imagine that they came to you with the problem that you have today, that you feel, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm stuck, what should I do as an artist, what should I, blah, blah, blah. Imagine that came from them, the little sibling or a friend of yours who you like. What would you say to that friend? What would you say to support them? And it's often far more nicer and kinder than what you would say to yourself. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of got pretty deep there, but that's something everybody needs to, everyone deals with, I suppose. I don't really know. I have a lot of negative voices in my own head of failures and things as a company that we could be doing better. And, if something's not right in the company, people aren't happy, or somebody didn't get a confirmation email that they should have got, and it's been a week. Why didn't we crush that bug? It definitely eats away at you, and you gotta, if you let it get out of hand, it can definitely undermine you. Anyways, let's move along. Number 5, something lighter. Number 5, the final thing to do: create an inspiration file. So when it gets tough, you will inevitably ask yourself, why am I doing this? Right? Inevitably, right? You might at the start be wondering, I don't need to worry about that. I'm really motivated. I'm going to do it. Humans are really bad at understanding what's going to come in the future, how we're going to feel in certain ways, how much failure, how much pain there's going to be. So when you're feeling motivated at the start and you want to like, yes, I'm going to learn, I'm motivated, you need to set yourself up for success by creating an inspiration file of things that are the reason that you are learning art. So in my case, the reason I was learning like 2D art was I really liked some of the drawings that I saw on ArtStation. They had this like flair and expression in the strokes and the patterns and things that I didn't see in 3D. I really liked it. And so what I started doing was just saving. I just like Control-C and Control-V in like an Evernote file. You could also use Pinterest or PureRef, that reference board thing, which is just kind of an open canvas. You drop files and images in there. You can create one of those, and you don't have to record even who the artist is. You can just drop it in there, and who cares? It's just for your eyes only to keep you motivated, because in the future, it could be a week, it could be 3 months from now, you will reach a point to the depths of your soul where you feel like, boy, God, there's nothing less that I want to do than hurt myself by getting back into art tonight and going through my 1 hour session of learning. And you need to do that. You need to do that. This inspiration file will be there for you in that moment. And it's amazing how quickly you forget why it is that you're learning, like why it is that you got into it in the first place when it's not top of mind, because you get so into the weeds, like especially with technical things like 3D software. You get so into like all the little functions, and there's other like a notification of YouTube, drop this new tutorial of like, oh, how to make mountains. And so you're like, oh, maybe I should learn mountains. And you're like, oh, wow, how to make a tree in this software. Oh, maybe I should learn this. And understanding engine optimization so that you can render faster. I got to learn this. And then you're like, you'll just reach a point of just like hitting a wall, and you'll be like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And then you go back to your inspiration file, and you'll see that like it was full of life and expression and exaggerated gesture and characters doing interesting things. And it was like, oh yeah, that was why I started. And it gives you a little pep, right? Better than anyone else could, because it's you talking to your future self. So I keep my inspiration file in Evernote, and I just open it up whenever I feel lost as to why I got started. There's also ArtStation collections. I have a little collection in there in ArtStation. But yeah, it just needs to be personal, just something for you to keep you motivated. So those are the few of the ideas there, guys. I hope that was useful to you. In the next episode, I don't know what we're going to talk about because I haven't received your videos yet. So if you have a burning question for me, blenderguru.com/podcast question. And there you'll get a Dropbox folder, and you can drop in your little video, and I'll see it. And I'll see your face. And I'll go, look at that guy. Look at his face. No, I don't know. I'll be nice, I promise. And make it interesting. Don't make it specific, like, oh, I'm making a tripod style robot from that Alien movie, and I'm stuck with the leg ring. Could you figure out and show me a screenshot of the screen or something? I don't want that. That's obviously not good for a podcast. But something around art motivation, habits, I don't know, success. Should you go to art school, portfolios, networking, job interviews? I don't know. Find something that's interesting to talk about, and then I'll talk about it. Hope this podcast episode was interesting. If it was, give it a like on YouTube, or just share a podcast with a friend. Tell someone else. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye. And as a final note that I forgot to bring up, this podcast is now available on other platforms. So you can find it on Spotify, you can find it on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, whatever that is, Radio Public, never heard of it. Not on Apple iTunes yet. I don't know what I have to do to get it on there, but evidently it's difficult. but you can find it on other places as well. So just type in Andrew Price Podcast and you should see my little face right there. That's it. Thanks.